tours. Oh, this is where we'll be coming at 5 p.m. today. Here, the carriage tours, Palmetto Carriage.
I thought it was a different location.
Excuse me, here. Oh, it's another map. So we are going to see if we can change our time for the carriage ride to an earlier time versus later this evening.
What's your step?
Whoa! That's a big horse. Am I brave enough to ride that tomorrow?
Yeah, you are.
This back here, everybody, is what we like to call the behind the scenes. So this is where our horses get tacked up in the morning, broke down in the evening. It's also where they get their baths at the end of the day. And it's also where they take their breaks throughout the day, like Dynamite and Mello over there. So that's why we like to call this our employee break room back here. So you got the misting fans on the wall, the water buckets, the sunshade up over top. So it tends to be about 10 to 15 degrees cooler back here than anywhere else in the city, especially in the hot summer months. So it's a great place for our horses to take their breaks at. They're in fact required by the city mandate a 15-minute break between each hour and four that they work. But here at Palmetto, we give our horses at least 30 minutes because we love our horses. They're our babies. We take good care of them. Building in the city of Charleston, built in 1713. Alright, if you look to the right, on the other side of those trees, that big red building back there, that was a business called The Brick. The Brick was ran by a lady by the name of Madam Gracie. She lived right here in this house with the yellow stucco on the front. Any idea what kind of business old Madam Gracie was running? I can tell you it definitely wasn't a candy shop, that's for sure. So that's right, good old house in ill repute. This was no ordinary brothel though, this was the highest end brothel in the city. So her clients were the elite of Charleston. So I'm talking about your wealthiest plantation owners, your financiers and blockade, right? Your city officials run wrought iron throughout our historical district. So wrought iron is the ironwork that is hand poured. So they use a hammer, anvil, they heat it up white hot, and then they bring it into this beautiful shape. A single gate entrance right here. Just the piece on the top right there. That would have taken a man about 500 hours to create. So literally thousands of hours have gone into creating these fences around the place. We're going to have red doors on all the Lutheran churches here in Charleston. That's because the Lutherans, they do believe that by walking through red doors, it's like walking through the blood of Christ, cleansing your soul, allowing you to come into church and worship. There's a graveyard here, that's called a French style graveyard, pretty basic, just grass and graves. It's not a cemetery, y'all, it is a graveyard. So a cemetery is not connected to a church, a graveyard is connected to the church. That's the difference between the two. Another rule of the graveyard is that you can only be buried in there once. If you have to be relocated, you will then have to be relocated to a cemetery. This is the Unitarian Church in Charleston, established and built in 1772. The church was not finished in 1772 because the Revolutionary War would actually stop production of this church about halfway through it because the British took over it and used it as their headquarters. In fact, right here on the right, where the Charleston Day School is today, this is where they stabled their horses during the Revolutionary War. So their graveyard here on the left, that's called an English-style graveyard. It's a lot more like a garden. More grown up, you got flowers. In fact, this church here was known as the church without a steeple for a very long time. They didn't put that steeple on top of there until 2010, y'all. So 103 years later. Wow. So when they built that steeple on top of there, it actually cost this church $6.5 million to build. That is a 14-foot cross on top of there that's coated in gold. So next hurricane we have, me, Yogi, and Boo Boo. We're gonna be down here waiting for that cross to blow up top of that church. That way I can drag it back to my house, go home and praise Jesus. You're also going to see on the houses, there's a lot of times going to be flower boxes like these here on the left. And so they had flower boxes in front of the windows because during the 17 and 1800s, we didn't have garbage bin or cleanup crew. So the horses, they would do their deeds out here on the street. People would throw their trash and their waste out here on the street. So the streets of Charleston back then, not a very good smelling place. So you put these flower boxes in front of your windows with nice, beautiful, good smelling flowers. That way when you open up your doors or your windows, you get that breeze in your house, hopefully of the good smell of the flowers, not the dirty street. We got the two beautiful southern live oak trees in the front. They call it southern live oaks because they've never been to a leaf. And then on the front of this house, y'all see those black plus signs on the front. So those are called earthquake washers. So here in the city of Charleston, we have had 18 earthquakes. And so they've all been pretty minor except for one, a large earthquake of 1886. So if we had the Richter scale back then, it would have actually been on a magnitude of a 7.2 to a 7.5. This is the largest earthquake we've ever experienced on the East Coast. That's because we actually do sit on two fault lines. We sit on the Ashley River fault line and the Woodstock fault line. The Woodstock fault line is going to be the second most active fault line in America. Both of those together created this large earthquake. So when people's houses would begin to shake, they'd actually come running out of their full home. So anyways, people, so this happened 21 years after the American Civil War. Before the Civil War, Charleston, the richest city in America. After the war, we've become one of the poorest cities in America. So people, they didn't really have money to tear down and rebuild. They come up with a way to repair their homes. So earthquake washers, like the plus signs that you saw. Got some more here on the right. These are circles this time. So what it is a washer and a nut on the outside of your house. You're going to have one on each side. You're then going to have a rod that runs through your floor joist from each side, and then it's going to meet to a turnbuckle in the center. Your job as a homeowner is to turn that turnbuckle about 6 inches every day. What that's going to do, it's going to slowly draw your walls of your home back together, cinching your home back up, tightening it. Works pretty good, y'all. In fact, a little too good. There's a seismologist that came to Charleston, and he did a study, and he said, not if but when we have our next major earthquake, then about 60% of these buildings with earthquake washers on them are going to implode because they are too tight. You can't loosen them up and it'll fall apart. All you can do is pray we're not going to have another major earthquake here. Ladies you ever met in your life. But they started in the 1930s, and when it states that if it is 75 years or older, you cannot tear it down or destroy it. So that goes from anything, step up boys, from carriage stepping stones to boot scrapes, horse ties, houses, walls, business signs, trees, anything 75 years or older, you cannot tear it down or destroy it. And for that reason, we are in fact the second largest historical district in the world. The only place that beats Charleston is Rome, Italy. And with that, Tavern Wine and Spirits, they opened up their doors in 1686. Very first city to have a theater, first city museum, very first golf course called Harleston Green. Right here in Harleston Village, it was called Harleston Greens and only 5 holes. The list just goes on and on. So these houses you're seeing here on the left and right side, these are all called Charleston singles. So a Charleston single It's going to be the most prevalent floor plan you're going to see out throughout the city of Charleston. In fact, there are going to be about 1,400 of these Charleston singles throughout the historical district. So these floor plans, it actually comes from Barbados, so Barbadian influence. That's also why you have a lot of pastel colored homes throughout the city of Charleston. That also comes from that Barbadian influence we have. And so the Charleston singles, these are boys' roots. Tip up. So the Charleston singles, they're going to be, got some more here on the left. They're going to be the houses that are a single room wide, 2 to 3 rooms deep, 2 to 3 stories high, and with a piazza on the front. Not a porch, y'all, a piazza. Because for one, we are fancy here in Charleston. And number 2, it actually comes after the Italian word for piazza. We just didn't have any Italians here to correct us. So we still call it a piazza today. And plus, you're never going to hear a posh Charlestonian lady say anything but, I want to have a glass of Chardonnay on my piazza. She's never going to say, I want a glass of white wine on my porch. That's what we say in Tennessee from where I'm from, y'all. But, we don't usually say wine up there. We like to say moonshine. I'm from the Confederates during the American Civil War. After that, this would become abandoned. Then a man by the name of Reverend Jenkins. He was an African-American man in the city of Charleston. He opens up the very first all-boy African-American orphanage in the state of South Carolina called the Jenkins Orphanage. So this was completely funded by him and his wife alone, because this is before the Civil Rights Movement. So unfortunately, the city and the state, they're not helping out financially, because unfortunately they're not too concerned with this sort of thing yet. So what Reverend Jenkins does, he brings in a bunch of musicians, train these boys how to play musical instruments. That way they can tour around the city in their band, earning money to run the orphanage. They get really good, y'all. They get so good, some of the greatest jazz players in America have come out here, including Freddie Green. They get so good, they tour America, they do a presidential inauguration, they even go to Europe and tour. So while they're touring around, they'd always have the littlest boy in the front. He wouldn't be playing an instrument, he'd actually be leading the band around and dancing while he was doing that. So while they're touring around America, a lady comes up to that little boy and she says, son, what are you doing? Up to 20,000. They're not exactly sure on the exact number, but at least 14,000 people have died here. And so they opened up this door in 1802. They don't shut the jail down until 1939. This is the first time it's ever gone under any kind of renovation since it opened in 1802. And so overcrowded, very, very overcrowded. Memphis only had a special room in that hotel. You put that man in that special room, you would then give him a cup of tea. That tea would have oleander in it, so poison. So you drink that poison tea, it is going to make you pass out on that bed. So that bed had a trap door underneath it. So you pass out on that bed, that trap door opens up, your body falls to the floor below, where there were spikes, and John Fisher standing down there with an axe in his hand to finish off the job. They're known for dating. So if you happen to see a lady in a white wedding dress and she then disappears, most likely is Miss Lavinia Fisher, y'all. So in the 1970s, when this hotel was not here, this area of the city, not a very nice place. Neither was the market that we're heading into. In fact, in the 1970s, you wouldn't have brought your easy boys, you wouldn't have brought your small kids down to the market at night. It would have been considered not safe to do so. In fact, in the 1970s, you can come down here to the market, and for 50 cents, you could get yourself a bowl of chili, a tattoo, and a communicable disease. Oh, it's the same thing.
Wow.
Pretty good deal, right?
70 cents?
50 cents.
50 cents. Dang.
This is the top of the market right here. So the top of the market, the second floor there is the Civil War Museum today. Each time that flag is out front flying, it means that it's open. I don't believe it's open today. So originally the top of the market here would have been where meat would have been butchered and processed. At the bottom of the market would have been seafood. And then in the middle stalls would have been
we walked through there.
So 1800s, we don't have garbage cleaner clean up here like I explained earlier. So they would actually just throw the scraps of meat and the rotten meat out here on the streets. Our cleanup crew in the market back then was called a Charleston Eagle. Y'all know what Charleston Eagle is? It's a buzzard. Look close. It's not the same equivalent of a bird. So yeah, a buzzard. So I told you we're fancy here in Charleston. We don't have buzzards, we got Charleston Eagles. We don't have torches, we got piazzas. We don't have cockroaches, we got palmetto bugs. And we don't have rats, we have river dogs. Oh my gosh. Baseball team is named.
Does that say shit shack? Oh, it's
Market
shit
here
shack.
is called the market today. It's a bunch of local vendors selling local art, crafts, and goods. In fact, we're selling this market today. It has to be locally sourced. So the market here originally was built in 1804 on top of a tile creek called Daniel's Tile Creek. So they filled in Daniel's Tile Creek with refuse over a 100-year period. So 1700, this is basically the garbage dump down here. That gets all filled in. The Pinckney family owned the land. So in 1804, they donated the land to the city of Charleston so they could build a centralized market, basically a grocery store. And so they said 3 rules when you build this market. The Holy City. Even though we're called the Holy City, it has nothing to do with how we act. I think we got so many churches here because we need to repent more than anybody else. So mid-1700s, you would have about 150 active congregations on the peninsula. That's going to be about 1 church for every 100 people. But guess what? For every 5 people, you had a bar, tavern, or a brothel. Not much different today, y'all. That's why still today in Charleston. So last but not least, you got good old Booze Pops. Booze Pops is a pretty wild company in Charleston, y'all. We are not like our sister cities, Savannah and New Orleans. You're not allowed to walk up and down our street with an open container in your hand. If you do it here, you're going to get yourself a ticket. Booze Pops found something out there. They found out that if you freeze it, it then becomes a food. So then you can legally walk up and down our streets eating your alcohol. You don't even have to have a liquor license to operate that. So much for us being 49th in education here in South Carolina. All right, everybody. I know I try to cram 350 years of history into an hour. I hope y'all learned a little something today, but more importantly, I hope y'all had a good time. So once again, my name is Spot. This is my dream team, Yogi and Boo up here. I really think